Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call the Finance Committee to order for March the 10th. All aldermen are here, except Alderman Heisler, who called. He's not here. We also have Alderman Polk and Alderman White and Alderman Schneider, who's here, as well as the department chairs. Over there. We appreciate that. Emergency, as typical in case of a fire and we had to evacuate this building, we'd ask you to leave as quickly as possible in an orderly fashion and then reconvene across the street in front of the St. Clair County sign in order for us to take roll and see that no one is left behind. In case we have to evacuate the chamber because of severe weather, then we would ask you to leave this chamber and go down to your right and follow the signs to the basement down to the area that's been designated as a safe place. So we hope those two things don't have to happen, but in case they do, we want to move forward. Okay, at this time I'm going to open it for public participation. If anybody that would like to address this committee, if you would step to the microphone, say your name and your address, and please keep your comments to about 2 to 3 minutes. We'd appreciate that. So anyone that would like to speak at this point. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Patty Law, and I live at 221 East Main. I also have my business there. I live above my business. I'd like to talk about the lighting downtown. That's my tax. I do pay extra taxes for the redevelopment, and I also belong to the Belleville Main Street Committee. And I think that the lighting is just an excellent idea. I think it's going to make our downtown stand out totally different from all other downtowns. St. Louis, I think, has 3 blocks on Washington, but we're talking 7 blocks. In West Main, the shop owners down there always kind of like they're a little bit left out on West Main, and this would completely connect both of them. So that, and then when people come, they're not just seeing a couple blocks, they're going to realize we've got 7 blocks of great downtown. I live upstairs, so some people have said to me, "Do you think the lighting would bother you?" Absolutely not. The street lights don't bother me at all. And it's such a low lighting, if you've seen it, it's not something that's so bright, you know, it's like the North Star. I think I have a question my customers on it because I like their input, and we have older customers and younger ones. And I thought my older ones might be a little, no. They think it's exciting because they've been in Belleville for so long and have seen how it was such a quiet ghost town and how it's just popped now that they think it's just one more thing that would really, really enchant it. And I think at nighttime, with all the activity, it would be a very, very festive look. It would just set Belleville apart. So I think it'd be a great thing.
Okay, thank you. Hey,
Jerry Boyer, 208 East Main Street, live across the street from Patty. So I'm here also representing Belleville Main Street. At the February 17th Belleville Main Street meeting, it was passed unanimously for Main Street to contribute some of our treasury toward the purchase of these lights. As you know, our money is gotten by fundraisers and by our memberships to Belleville Main Street. So we are willing to put in some of our money, and then as a member of Downtown Development Redevelopment Committee, as you know, that money comes from the additional property tax that us that own buildings downtown, we pay, and we're grateful that we have an opportunity to use that money to actually enhance outside of our door. So I just want to come and say that Main Street unanimously voted for it. It was one of our largest meetings because people are so excited about it. Definitely the merchants and of course the restaurants and bar owners are really excited about it because they feel like it's going to bring more people to downtown to sit outside and enjoy the nice weather. So thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, then I will close public participation. Thank you to those who came. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for February 10th. I'll entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Alderman Schmidt, second. Alderman Steiber. Discussion, corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Jamie, as for audits.
In your packets, there was some information from a company called Azabar Audit Solutions. They were actually supposed to have a representative here tonight. At the last minute, they called today. Something else came up. They weren't able to attend. But they did want me to pass on that if there are questions, I will get them to them tomorrow and get you all written responses within the next couple of days, but by the latest by the council meeting. We talked about this, I would say probably some finance meetings and some city council meetings it was brought up. Some of our tax revenues, especially utility tax revenues, telecommunications tax revenues, have been declining. Telecommunications especially, we're projecting this year is going to be down about $250,000. Based on everybody else I've talked to with telephone companies in the state, even though we thought maybe some of it was the decrease in landlines and that sort of thing, they say the state average is nowhere near that big of a dip. So what this company essentially does, they come in, audit all of the telephone companies, Ameren, Charter, everybody we have a franchise agreement with, everybody who is supposed to be remitting utility tax or telecommunications tax to us. I think they even work a little bit with sales tax to make sure they essentially do audits. It's not so much on the city's staff time, but they devote a lot of their staff time working with these companies, getting the information, doing this audit to make sure that every penny that we're supposed to be getting, we are. And they found lots of errors in even surrounding communities around here in the Metro East where they have big findings. In O'Fallon, you probably read about in Bellwood, who's Democrat, with Ameren and utility tax. When I told them how much our telephone tax had been decreasing, he about fell out of the chair and said that's not right. He said that's way more than the state average. So essentially what they'll do, they'll come in. He said an audit usually takes about 6 months. Dallas and I met with him. I think we were both pretty impressed. They do a lot of work, not a lot on staff time. We get them all the initial information. They look at GIS systems, the 911 system, kind of all on their own, do the audit. They're paid on a contingency fee basis. So if they find nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong, they've done all that work for nothing. They don't get one penny from us. Whatever they do find that is supposed to be money remitted to us, that say a telephone company was reporting wrong, or there was people coded to the county as opposed to the city, which we know there's problems with that sometimes with our Belleville addresses. Any additional revenue they find that we're supposed to be getting, once they get that corrected, for a period of 36 months, they will get 45% of the revenue. They verify that going forward with me. We cut them a check each month for whatever we collected 45% of. That actually, I guess their normal rate is 50%, but they worked out with, they've kind of created a consortium in the Metro East of several communities that belong to the Treasurers Association that Dean and I belong to, and they've lowered it to 45%.
I just want to say that a number of years ago, right before Jamie got here, Nancy Beckman and I, some of you in this room may have questioned it, we questioned. We did kind of an in-house audit of a couple of them because of the 62226 zip code. And at that time, we found a pretty significant fluctuation, and we came out, while there was a few of them that we were getting that we shouldn't have been getting, far more we found that we should have been getting the tax on than what us, particularly on Ameren. So we corrected quite a bit then, but when we started talking about this a while back, that we thought this was time now to do it. And now that other cities have had some success with this company, I think it's a smart move that we go ahead and try to, especially with telecommunicators tax, really dipping this past year, last 18 months or so, excuse me, I think it's very important that we would, have that really studied, and I think it's a good time to do that.
Yeah, and I would just want to mention, while it appears like, and they're pretty confident that they're going to find some stuff, it could turn out, they come back and say, you know what, we didn't find anything, or we found something so little, it was barely worth our time, but essentially we get to keep 55% of everything they find, and it's money that we're not getting now that we should be, so.
Yeah, Jamie, I think you might have just cleared up the question. I said, we keep 55% of what they find. In other words, it's not, they get 45% of the total.
No.
It's
So
what they uncover.
the new finds.
Okay.
If they find, for instance, if they make findings that show that there was 5 households that we weren't collecting on and they'll net to $100 a year, they're gonna get $45.
And that's only for 36 months, and then after the 36 months, then we get the total.
Correct.
Okay. Alderman Davis.
They get anything retroactive, it says it here. Retroactive, they get 45% too.
What they've done is, there are statute of limitations on some of the different types of tax, especially utility tax, where they can go back a number of calendar years. If it's obvious that, the utility company was in the wrong and hadn't been reporting the way they should, and it's been going on for a while, they can go back and try to recover 2 years, I think it's about 2 years worth of revenues backwards. Of course, they will come to this council with any sort of findings first before we decide how we're going to proceed with going back or going forward or anything.
Alderman Stream.
Then I'd like to make a motion that we vote in favor of the AZAR Audit Solutions Agreement and send it to the full council with the recommendation that they vote in favor.
I have a motion, do I have a second? Alderman Stoddard, second. Further questions?
What kind of time span are we talking? I know it's 36 months in the future, but what kind of time span are they have to correct this?
They said their typical length of their audit from start to finish is about 6 months. They say about, I talked to Collinsville, they're using them, they said they're about the 9-month range right now. So while in a perfect world I'd say 6 months or less, we're gonna be realizing these new revenues. They said depending on what kind of things they stumble across and how much extra work it is, it could prolong it. But it is, the revenue that we have to share with them, essentially their 45% is from the date that they find it and it's corrected and we receive that revenue. So the first month we receive that revenue for each individual account that they find, it's a 36-month kind of time clock.
And how does that fit into the budget, this next budget? Because we're going to be into the next budget year.
Right, for right now, what I've done is I haven't assumed that they're gonna find anything. I've been conservative with the revenues. Anything that they find would be a plus.
Jamie, did you say that O'Fallon, are they using this same company?
O'Fallon did a few years ago, used the same company, I believe Glen Carbon. I'd have to look at the list of the other ones. They actually found quite a bit of issues with Ameren's utility tax in O'Fallon, and even they, Azafar, actually litigated on behalf of O'Fallon to go back and recover a lot of that money. So,
Alderman Randall?
Jamie, did you say Collinsville was making use of them as well?
yes.
Okay, what was the feedback from the officials up at Collinsville?
I did talk to Tammy Amon, who's their finance director, just to confirm that their rate is the same and, everything was getting shared equally amongst all the communities. And she said it's been a long process. There hasn't been a lot of staff time devoted, really. They do get feedback, every couple of weeks from them, of here's what's findings we've found, here's maybe a little bit more information we need.
So they're still in the audit?
Yes, they're still currently in their audit. She said it's been about 9 months right now.
And are they 45%?
Yes.
They are, okay.
And Jamie, this is something that we can't do ourselves.
Like the mayor said, actually 2 years ago, my office did an in-house audit of the utility tax with Ameren. Ameren provided us a list of, there are thousands upon thousands of records for people who were supposed to be or who they were charging utility tax for. We had to go through every address and verify, yes, that is in the city, no, that's not. There was some that we were getting revenue for that it clearly said the address was in Dupo, and I called Amber and I said, what are you guys doing to me? That says Dupo. If somebody turned it in as City of Belleville, like a contractor or somebody when a house was built. To be honest, we uncovered quite a few that were in our favor 2 years ago during that audit, but that took one member of my staff probably about 4 months to complete in her free time. And I'd be the first to admit, we didn't find everything. There's no possible way one person could with the information we had. We didn't have an advanced GIS system. We technically still don't. They're working on improving our GIS system. And a lot of what they work with is the 911 records for the telephone, and they get that directly. I've talked to 911 before, they don't give me that information. So I'm never going to say it couldn't be done in-house as efficiently and as well. No.
There is no upfront money for us, I don't see anything in here.
No
So
fees.
there's no upfront for staff, or their staff, or whatever fees that they
No, essentially, the process they said is they send a staff member down, who will probably be here about a half a day. He said sitting in a corner somewhere, scanning our ordinances, our franchise agreements, all sorts of documentation that we have to provide to them. They said that takes the most of our staff time, is gathering those documents, and they provide a list well in advance of that person coming down. They said after that, we probably won't see them for quite a while. They work kind of out of their offices, keep us up to date of what they're finding. But like I said, this is almost kind of on their risk, because if they find nothing, they get nothing, and they've devoted a lot of staff time for no reward. But they're pretty confident that they're going to find some errors. Yes.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious, does their audit include any determination of how these things come about?
Yes.
It does.
They even filled me in a lot of times what happens, and I honestly never do this. With the telecommunications tax, they found that there's a lot of errors when people sign up and get a cell phone. If they go to, say, Fairview Heights and buy a cell phone, sometimes those numbers are registered under Fairview Heights, and they don't change it to the address if somebody moves or whatever. Usually sometimes when it's initially set up, they'll put it correctly, but when somebody moves, it stays at the location of the cell phone company. I never did that before. They said they see that error all the time.
So how much money have we really kind of like, are we missing here?
We don't know.
We have no idea. So it's kind of like sands in the hourglass.
That's why I think we encourage this to be done, because we don't know. I agree with Jamie. It's only Jamie and two other young ladies in her office. So they have a pretty slim staff to take on anything this magnitude. And, like I said, the risk is really on them. And for us to find this out, I think is a smart baseline to see where we're at. And I think we can learn from this. And hopefully we can also learn where some of these things have slipped through the cracks, and maybe through policy procedures or earlier follow-up, we can stop some of this deterioration in the future.
I don't disagree with you, Mayor, and as a matter of fact, I agree with that last point there in terms of our ability to identify it and keep things in balance ourselves.
Jamie, this is going to be at a point in time, say 6 months, 9 months from now, there's going to be a point in time for these accounts. I mean, that's what happens after this? Do they update a year from now, or do they have that capability, or do we want to?
Essentially what happens in the 36 months that we're tied to paying them out, they continue to verify that we're collecting on all the accounts that they found. And then what would happen at that point is if you wanted a review again to see if there were any additional that were missed out on or everything, you'd almost have to contract them again. Because it is an ever-changing thing. As
Sure.
more properties are annexed or people move, it's ever-changing.
I mean, what's to keep Amber?
Well, and we keep mentioning Ameren, but we have all of these other sub-electric companies. How does that work? I mean, we, the city, have Glacier. Is that what, how does it monitor all of those companies?
Yeah, essentially, right now For any utility provider, like, that you can subcontract off, they usually still are billed through Ameren on the bill.
Right.
And so Ameren collects the utility tax and remits it. But they will look, I mean, I couldn't even count all the phone companies they're gonna look at between.
And the other thing is
AT&T.
Charter also.
They'll
Well,
look
that
at,
was what my question is.
Charter's also
For
included.
television.
right,
Providers.
they said they have found, especially in the Metro East, countless errors with the charter remittances for franchise fees.
And this is something we've questioned before, but once again, didn't have the staff. And I just think it's a smart thing to move forward on. Let's give it a try.
Oh, I'm just wanting to know how broad the scope is. Do they look at AT&T? Do they look at, you know, my daughter's moved back home, but her phone is still registered in Indiana.
Yeah, they look
We're gonna
at
get
pretty
you.
much every provider.
You're gonna get hurt.
They look at pretty much every provider that's licensed to
Okay.
do business in the state.
Okay, any other? I'm going to have a motion and a second to approve this agreement with Azabar, and we will move it on to council. We'll do a roll call vote. Schmidt?
Yes, aye.
Randall?
Aye.
Davidson?
Aye.
Seibert? Galetti? Musgrove? Aye. Sophie votes aye. Mayor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next would be street department backhoe bid. We received a copy of that.
Yeah, tonight I handed out a copy. This bid was actually just opened this morning, which is why it didn't get to you until now. We did have a backhoe purchase in the budget out of TIF. We went out for bid. As you can see, there was 4 companies that submitted a bid. H. Edwards Equipment meets all the specs, and they bid $79,400 less a trade-in of $8,200, so it'll be $71,200 net cost. And that is under the budget. We had a budget of $100,000 for that.
Okay, motion by Seibert, second by Schmidt. Discussion.
I assume maybe all these bids, all these companies that bid met our qualifications.
Yes.
All 4,
Right, Chuck? All the qualifications were met.
by all 4?
Correct.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Schmidt?
Aye.
Randall?
Aye.
Davidson?
Aye.
Seibert? Galetti? Musgrove?
Aye.
Sillsby votes aye. Mayor?
Aye.
Motion approved. This will go to council. Okay, next, new additional lighting in downtown special service district.
Okay, as you heard, a couple of young ladies spoke during public participation, and you've seen this already a little bit being talked about. Main Street started this initiative. We talked about it, actually it was talked about when we did the streetscape. Because if some of you remember, there might be a handful of us, when they actually selected this light pole, they went over to St. Louis, a number of people, to look at the setup when we did the streetscape. And there's a hook at the top and there's an electrical box at the top that things of this nature we could plan for, and that's why we set them up that way, actually. We just didn't take that on initially. The young ladies here spoke tonight about the fact that they live downtown and the ambiance and the Main Street group, and a lot of the business owners are very excited. I did talk to several of the bar restaurant owners, and they really like it. The one thing I do also say is, I think it's going to also provide the additional lighting. The way we do it will be will be a good thing also for some safety. I think there's some of the bump outs get a little bit dark, and I think the lighting going across there, I think will help people in the hustle and bustle of downtown. People are, you can't help it, but they do cross the street sometimes, places other than the intersection. And I think the additional lighting will, especially traffic that's not used to downtown Belleville, it will, we believe, will have a bit of a calming effect for people to kind of slow down. We're into some new zone here, and I think you'll get people to be a little bit more in tune to, it can be a traffic, it can be in our favor for traffic control to a degree. Now, you can't hold me to that, but I think it has some value amongst talking through engineers. So I think it's a good thing. What they have here is Main Street's pledge, the lighting is about $50,000, right at $50,000. Jerry Boyer did most of the research, and Tom Bell from Glenzer Electric did a lot of footwork for her at Main Street. They found these lights, these LEDs. There's a small sampling some of you may have seen on those little lights in the courtyard at Church and Main. They're a very low voltage, so the electricity on them is getting, every time we figure it's getting cheaper. I think we're down to less than 25 cents per block per day,
Per night, yeah.
per night. So it's not that much electricity. And then with our deal with Ameren, I think we figure it's even going to be less than that with the arrangement we
Because
have.
of your franchise agreement.
Because we're franchised, so I think it's going to be even less than that. They have a 20-year warranty, and Main Street has pledged $12,500. Downtown redevelopment are the people, as these two young ladies are, who live downtown, pay that service district tax. That board, that commission approved $12,500, and I'm proposing that we would take, and I did talk to our TIF consultant, who said this is totally legal. It's a step, another step to what we use for the streetscape, which was where we paid for the streetscape is to TIF primarily, the vast majority of it, right, Jamie? Bonds. And it enhances the lighting for safety and for ambiance and for the whole streetscape decor. And he says it's totally within your realm to use. So we're recommending that the balance of $25,000 be taken out of TIF 2, which is the TIF that's going to go away in 2017, I believe, and is right there on the square for a block or two. And I talked to Norbert, and he said, with the way you have it right in the middle, he said that totally is legal and it totally is very fitting. So I checked out all those avenues with Mr. Norbert, and I believe it would be something. I do believe there's a lot of merchants who are very excited about it. I think you heard Jerry say that the Main Street had their largest meeting and they were unanimous. And you don't get that group to be unanimous very often.
Very often.
So,
Alderman Schmidt?
If we approve this tonight, and assuming the council approves it Monday night, how soon would the lights?
well, that's what I'd like to have included in the motion. I'd like to, by the time it goes to council, if it's favorable, I'd like to ask that we give permission to order, to get them ordered. You've already got half of the money committed from two other groups. If we get it ordered, Tom Bell and Chuck had talked that we can still have, we can have them up, because we're, part of the way to keep it down, the cost is to have, he'll work with our staff. We put up the Christmas lights, it's not much difference. We can have them up before Arden Square, which would be big. Huh?
And they'll run all night, or?
No, they're on a sensor, So-
They'll run exactly the way the streetlights do.
just like the street lights.
When the
dusk it off.
streetlights are on, they'll be on,
Right.
and when the streetlights are off.
That's what I meant, but all night.
Yeah.
They're on a motion time, it's a sensor thing.
Is the 50,000, is that upfront cost? I mean, do we pay, can we pay the payments, or is it,
We'll have to pay it upon delivery, I'm sure.
He said that he would take partial payment, so Main Street, we could pay $12,500, because we've already appropriated it through downtown development, redevelopment, and he could wait for the city's money.
Well, we told Tom that we wouldn't have this money available till after May 1st, if it passes. But if we can get it passed by this body and the council, we would like to ask that maybe, because the Arden Square is a big festival, and if we do all embrace this, it would be great to have it up for this bicentennial year by the kickoff of that event.
Alderman Schmidt?
Well, then I'd like to make a motion that we approve this and send it to council with a recommendation that they approve it and we get it ordered
Okay, for $25,000.
for $25,000, yes.
Okay, we have a motion, do I have a second? Alderman Davidson. Any other discussion? Alderman Paul?
I'm a little muddy about half is 25, but then the figure 12.5 was mentioned.
Two groups of 12.5.
There's two groups paying.
Downtown
12.5.
redevelopment voted to give 12.5, and Main Street voted to give 12.5. So that would be 25,000 that's pledged, and then the other half would be from TIF 2.
So it costs us, so it costs the city 25,000.
Right,
The warranty is for 20 years.
right.
So we're talking $1,250? You're my man. $1,250 a year. I mean, that's what it would cost.
Yeah, that's roughly,
Basically, I mean, we can't stretch that out. I would like to, you know,
Plus utilities.
but
plus
utilities.
you took, but they seem to be minimal, right?
We're looking at another $1,250 or so then for utilities? Is that
Um,
accurate?
That number was before Tom had done had gotten the light manufacturer to give him the number. So that number has been cut like in by 6. So, and also the franchise agreement will cut it even more. So it is truly minimal, and I don't know what it exactly is. But of course, Main Street, I mean, we've said that if the city, if they say, hey, we really have had our bill go up, we noticed this, we'll be happy then to contribute. And Main Street merchants have agreed to that. That's great.
And that was a little vague for me. We already know it's gonna go up $100 a month. At one point, would the city say, this is more than we're going to do?
We
Still
don't.
$100 annually?
The reason that it's vague is because, talking to Tom, is that all over the city, there's lights that go out and come back on, all over. So the bill's never constant anyway. It's always a little bit fluctuating. And so he said that because it's such a small amount of electricity, we may not notice because it's always fluctuating a little bit anyway because there's street lights that go out and then they get them replaced. And so that's why he said that you may not even notice it. Like would be no way to
One of the
measure
questions
it.
I had is if we'll be able to, and they're checking on this, if we'll be able to kind of take that zone and figure what that additional electricity is on those streetlights in the downtown special service district. And that would be a way, if we see an increase, to go back to Main Street or downtown development and say, you know, we have seen a $100 a month increase for sure. Would you help us with this in the future? I think that's something we can, but we don't know. And quite honestly, every time this thing has gotten cheaper, and it seems like it's diminishing the cost, every conversation we've had with the manufacturer. So I mean, I don't think the electricity is, that was one of my major concerns at first. What's the electricity going to impact the city? But apparently with these LED and from what you're saying, it's and from what the wholesaler, Tom Bell, who's the distributor, I guess you call him, locally here, he's finding that it looks like this is getting cheaper instead of more expensive. So we'll have to watch it.
Okay, it's a cute idea. I appreciate the merchants, organize themselves and came forward with it. But I have to say, from somebody who lives just 3 blocks away and deals with broken sidewalks and potholes, we just keep adding and adding and adding to downtown. And I don't see that there's a return for this. It's cute the way it is. I would not have a problem with the compromise of staying these committees for the year if they have to have it now, if they pay us back the rest of $25,000 next year. If we're just taking $25,000 out of TIP for decoration, I have a problem with that.
Any other comments? Now we do a roll call. We have a motion and a second to approve this and move it on to council. Cost would be $25,000. Schmidt?
Aye.
Randall?
No.
Davidson?
Aye.
Seibert?
Aye.
Galetti?
No.
Musgrove?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Mayor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll go on to council. Will it be on this
Yes.
next week? Okay. Next is contribution to Leadership Council referendum maintaining Scott Air Force presence.
Okay, you've all been reading, and I had a good meeting recently with our Director of Leadership Council, Ellen Crony, and Jerry Costello came in. As you know, the Leadership Council has acquired retired Congressman Costello and retired 4-star General Duncan McNabb to start to work with us, the Leadership Council, on being prepared for the strong possibility of a BRAC. for those of you who aren't familiar with this, this is a rounded-based clothing. Bless you. While at this point, the elected officials say there'll be no BRAC right now, the budget cuts have told the military leaders that, well, you may not call the BRAC, but you've cut our budget, but each branch has been cut significantly, and it's going to be talked about and finalized before October. And what they're going to be doing then is making decisions at the Pentagon about closing certain bases on their own, possibly, or about moving, reassigning various missions. And if that happens, then the elected officials really don't have the ability to lobby. Duncan McNabb is very, very well versed in and very talented in knowing what it's going to take to try to get some additional missions to Scott. Some people are saying, well, Scott will never be touched. You got Transcom and you have Air Mobility Command, and that's not true. We have limited flying missions, and we are not excluded from consideration. I think that they have started a campaign to raise some money to be able to aggressively go after not only obtaining these folks to work for us, but to do the things we need to do to be on the offensive instead of waiting until there is an announcement and then we're scrambling like we were in 1995. And again, I guess it was 2005, was that the second round? Somewhere in there. And we did better the second time. It was a little easier process. We knew it. But I will tell you, in 1995, we were very, very vulnerable to having this base closed. We've seen Washington. We've seen how they sporadically do things. We've watched the news when the government's come to a grinding halt about different in recent year, last year or so. So what I'm getting to is this. They ask all cities, they're asking corporate sponsors, etc., to make some pledges to help with the next several years of funding the Leadership Council, as we did in the past, to help fight for the make sure that we don't close this base. I would recommend to you that the city of Belleville, we are the largest city, that we would consider a $5,000 a year for the next 5-year contribution. It's not set in stone. They're not coming with an exact mandate. But and really and truthfully, a lot of the cities are waiting to see what Belleville's going to do. They already said, well, what's Belleville doing? We have the longest history with Scott Air Force Base. We actually sold, the city of Belleville actually sold Scott Air Force Base the property back in 1917, if anybody knows your history, knows the history of Scott. We have the longest military committee that still exists today at 64 years with the base. So I don't like the idea of spending the money, but I do believe that this pledge will be well spent to be a partner with all the other communities and the businesses. And the businesses that are stepping up are not only on this side of the river, it's the St. Louis side. As you know, the Scott Air Force Base is a $4 billion economic engine for this region. So if Scott Air Force Base were to close, heaven forbid that would ever happen, people really can't imagine the economic tragedy that would be for this region. It would be unimaginable. And so this is actually stepping up ahead of time to try to make sure we're organized, we're together, and that we have a plan in how to hopefully strengthen that base and keep it here forever. So I'm recommending that we would commit $5,000 for the next 5 years. They're asking for a 5-year plan. A 5-year commitment is what the Leadership Council is asking all cities. The county gave, St. Clair County and Madison County each started off putting $50,000 each into this commitment. So they each gave $50,000 for startup in this process. And they have even now made a request to the state of Illinois to help with some money for this effort to maintain the fight for Scott Air Force Base. And I do think, as much as I hate to add expenses to our budget, but I do think this is an expense that we need to endure and that we need to make work.
Where would this 5,000 come out?
Well, this year, since we didn't really have a plan, they came to us. I knew they were going to start the campaign. I didn't know exactly when. They came to my office just actually in the last 2 weeks. And Jamie and I talked about it many, many months ago, but didn't have it penciled in. This first year, we feel like we can assume the 5 out of marketing. But in the future, we'd have to, with some of the things that we have planned and et cetera, we'd have to budget it in the future years and each year. We just have to look at the commitment. But I do believe it's the right thing to do. And I do believe, as the largest city in Southern Illinois, I understand why they're coming to us really first for a commitment. City of Troy was the only other one that made a commitment thus far, and they pledged $2,500.
My question was yours, but I also want to say, I have a friend who lived in Rantoul when they closed, I can't remember what the name of the base was there. And that was devastating. They lost the business because of it, and a lot of people lost their livelihood, and it's devastating. And I don't think they'd still recover. They never will.
And I'll be honest with you folks, I don't think the Leadership Council could have a better team than Jerry Costello, who worked very hard on the previous bracket, and especially in the last one in 2005, I guess it was. And I think Duncan McNabb, I think they're an excellent team of knowing what needs to be put together to make this, to help secure this base for the future.
Alderman Randall?
It's just an observation, okay, but the $25,000 that we just committed for lights in downtown would seem to have covered
We can't take the, sorry, the money for the lights is out of TIF 2, a downtown TIF. The TIF consultant to do this, I don't believe would be appropriate. This is out of the general fund. This is a commitment out of the general fund. This is not, the lighting and infrastructure are a part of the streetscape that can be approved, but this year, I don't believe would qualify. Jamie and I both agree that that would happen together.
Alderman Gliding?
What is this money?
Would you please speak into the microphone? It's kind of hard to hear.
When the money is all in a little pool and it's all collected, what's it going to be used for?
It's going to be used for the hiring of these consultants and the team that's going to go work to strategize and help bring hopefully some more missions to Scott, to strengthen Scott Air Force Base, and to prepare us for the BRAC fight. It was, it was quite a battle when we went through the last 2 rounds.
So what you're saying is that the men that you've mentioned, this money's
They-
going to be used to pay them?
They'll certainly be there, and there's another firm out of Washington that's also part of this package. That is a firm, I guess for lack of a better word, probably a lobbying firm that will work with them that is very has a very strong reputation in Washington D.C. to do the kind of things you need to do. I can tell you some of the other bases. What Costello told me, that are ones who also, like Scott, some might think are untouchable now. They're already being very proactive in hiring, putting their teams together. They want to make sure that they're not chasing their tail at the end, and they want to make sure that they grow their bases and bring on, if you remember, one of the things that helped us the last BRAC was we ended up getting the surface deployment detachment brought here. After the very first BRAC was when Congressman Costello and a bunch of folks helped us bring the tankers from the city of Chicago, the Guard unit, down here. And that's when they extended the runway and we made those things happen. So there's been steps happening each time, and they believe that we have to continue on that mindset to grow this base if we want to protect it for the future. And while we have grown the missions, they don't think it's safe yet.
So in a word, we're paying for lobbyists.
You're paying for consultants, you're paying for people to go and put together a plan to help Scott Air Force Base grow and not be vulnerable to be cut. So I don't use the word lobbyist for the whole thing.
But that's their only, they do not have the positions anymore to make those decisions. They want to influence the people who make those
Well,
decisions. That's a
they
lobbyist.
have the ability to help us present a plan that is, will open up the, will do some of the legwork to help connect all the dots to grow this base.
You know, we recently had someone before this council who was here strictly because of a BRAC at another facility. He came to Scott because of BRAC. He was the team leader of 100 people who came here.
I
He
understand.
chose to live in Belleville. But then he committed the cardinal sin of wanting to open a business in Belleville and was turned down flat. One story like that in the military community.
I don't think we can mix, I don't think you can mix apples and oranges. That's a whole different, that was not nothing to do, that man was not turned down because of his military experience or, you know, relationship or anything else.
That's
You're
a subject
you're
of
stretching that, you're
interpretation.
stretching that, and you're putting words in our mouths that aren't fair.
Okay, then let me just say this flat out. You're naively throwing your money away to a washed-up politician who's not going to accomplish anything.
Well, you can have, you're entitled to your opinion. I will tell you that
But
virtually,
my opinion is based on my years of experience with the military.
well,
This, BRAC is done on a formula. It's based on facts, not influence.
I would just say, Alderman Holt, I'm sorry, but I don't believe your experience with BRAC is anywhere near to compare to Jerry Costello's experience or Duncan McNabb's. And I think that their experience level and their ability to help, and they've convinced the Leadership Council unanimously that this is a part of the group that this area needs to have, and a plan that we need to put together if we're going to not be asleep at the switch and sit here and potentially say, man, it was a shame, I can't believe Scott Air Force Base is being picked apart.
Can they get us a flying mission?
That's certainly something that they're working already on trying to work on. They're working on that. And that will be a part of this effort, is to increase the missions and the strength of the base. Absolutely. Congressman Costello told me that, and with, they will be working on growing this base.
I have another word, SAG lobbyist. I have a word, it's jobs. That's a word. That's why we would do this, is jobs.
Oh my God, the economy.
I mean, imagine taking Scott out.
No,
You know
I don't disagree
what
with you.
would
I
that
just
do to
think
us?
this is not,
Are you going to be effective? Are you the smartest guy?
But here's the deal, Alderman, you understand, we do not, as civilians, have the ability, nor do the military people, we can't go directly to the four-star generals who are currently serving, and they're not allowed to have any discussion with any leaders, and they are not allowed to have any input. But a retired four-star general who ran Transcom and who ran air mobility now has the ability to say, I know after serving for 40 years, darn near 39 years, Duncan, somewhere in there at that level served. He has the experience, and now for the first time in his life has the opportunity to speak up and say, this is what I believe could be done. And he has that based on his massive number of years of experience and the rank. There's not very many four-star generals in the country. He carries a lot of knowledge and still a lot of respect and influence as he would be. And he's in a position to help retired Congressman Costello contact the right people and plant these seeds and these opportunities to grow that base. We are not, military commission officers are not allowed to directly engage in the politics that a BRAC brings.
then who are they going to influence? If they cannot influence the military leaders, who is it they're going to influence?
they have the ability to bring a plan forward that the military will look at. The current generals can't go out there and interact with the communities and get input and do that. They don't. They can't do that. They're not allowed. They're not allowed to go out there and to, in a sense, politic with the communities or seek input. They're doing it all strictly on a military basis. These people can help us. And it's proven. And you know, I would suggest that you take your questions to the Leadership Council and have them better answer it in more detail than I can. But I'm very convinced that this effort is necessary, and I'm also very convinced that the city of Belleville needs to be a team player in this effort. And I think what we're asking is reasonable, and I think it should be, we should set the pace to do this.
Alderman Snyder?
Yes. Excuse me. My question is the money. How did we come up to decide that we were gonna do this much? I think you said someone's gonna contribute $2,500. How did we come up to base our amount by?
Well, City of Troy was the only one that made a commitment so far, and they pledged only $2,500, I guess, a year. They're a much smaller community than us. I don't think they're barely.
But how did we come up, how did you, or?
In a conversation with them.
How did?
In a conversation with them, when we were talking about a commitment, and I asked if any others had committed, and they said the only one at that time was Troy. Many of them said they're waiting to see what Belleville does. Looking at the fact that we are the largest city in Southern Illinois, I came up with and said, if we could commit $5,000 a year for a 5-year period, would that be helpful, and how would you view that participation level? They were very pleased. They thought that was a great bar to set, but it was my suggestion. They didn't arm twist me for $5,000 a year. I brought it up after hearing what little conversation I did from that one community, and looking at the fact that we're a city of almost 45,000 people, and that we do, I don't know if we would be devastated the most, but if Scott Air Force Base were to downsize or go away, the city of Belleville would be drastically affected. Some of the neighboring communities would be catastrophically affected, I believe, is my opinion. But I think that a $5,000 a year commitment, if that really helps the Leadership Council, and that the people who were in my office the day that we had this meeting were very appreciative of what I was going to propose to this council at $5,000 over a 5 year, times 5 years. So that's how it came up.
Could we possibly donate a little less, I mean, somewhat less? I mean, I just am curious.
You know,
We can always-
if you get enough votes here, or it doesn't even go to council, it's dead. But I would be quite embarrassed if the city of Belleville didn't step up to the plate and set the tone for this. This is not new news. This has been talked about for some time, that the Leadership Council was mobilizing and establishing this effort to move forward in a positive way, to take every step we can to make sure that Scott Air Force Base is here for the years to come.
But what I'm saying is, you can always donate more or pledge more.
And I'll be honest with you,
But you
if we have a
can't
year,
take away.
if we have a year where we couldn't afford it, we're not signing a contract with them. We're giving them a pledge of what we're going to do our best to obtain and complete. If we had, the bottom fell out of something, and we had to cut back on it, or we had to extend it out another year, I think all those things are totally very possible. This is a voluntary commitment. We're not signing a contract with them. We're committing ourselves. It's kind of on a character basis. We would be making a commitment that we pledge to do something, and hopefully we would live up to our obligation.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the contribution of $25,000, $5,000 a year for 5 years, and we send it to the full council with the recommendation that they approve it also.
Seibert. We have a motion and a second to approve $5,000 a year for the next 5 years to the Leadership Council. Any other discussion? We'll do a roll call. Schmidt?
Aye.
Randall?
Aye.
Davidson?
Aye.
Seibert? Galletti? Musgrove? Aye. Chair votes aye. Mayor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is police station financing.
Yeah, I put this on the agenda hoping that we'd have some more information by tonight, but I unfortunately don't. It'll probably have to be postponed until the next meeting. Essentially what we're still going over right now, we've included conversations with our bond financial advisor, Joy Howard. I think most of you know her from previous bond financing here at the city. Right now, obviously, all we have committed to is the $3.1 million for the building, and we're trying to figure out the best means to finance that. Is it a short-term bank loan over 3 years? Is it go ahead and bond finance that to get lower rates, knowing that, you know, we're gonna finance the rest of this and roll it into it? So we're just trying to weigh all of our options. We haven't concluded on what is the best idea yet. The rates we're seeing right now that banks are quoting us are in the mid-twos, about 2.5, I think was the lowest I got for a 3 or 4 year loan, paying about $1 million a year until that was paid off. Obviously, anything we do, if we do a short-term bank loan, we're gonna make sure that our hands aren't tied if we do later finance the full project, that it could be rolled into that to save us money as well. So we're just taking our time to make sure that we don't stub our toe with the financing for something later and get the best savings we can. So unfortunately, I'm not ready for any sort of vote or anything tonight, but I kind of want to give you an update on where we were, and I hope to have more, but I did not today, so that should be coming up in the next month.
Okay, next is an agreement with Payment Services Network. Treasurer Dean.
All right, thank you. I gave everybody pretty much almost all the information regarding this proposal that you would need. Keeping it short, I guess, I would just simply go over the pros and the cons, to this proposal. I know that every day, my ladies, my staff get comments from our residents about the fact we don't take Visa. This is one quick way to get that in there and be able to accept Visa, but also to provide some value-added services to the residents, for sewer billing and trash services to receive payments. Pros for the residents, they are able to, once they set up an account with PSN, they're able to schedule payments. So they are auto-recurring if they desire. Again, they know they take Visa as a form of payment. They no longer have to re-enter their information as they do now with ePay. Once they create their profile, that information is saved, and they're going to edit, subtract, delete their profile with PSN. They will now have access to their bills, usage data, and payment history. That's something that we'll be providing that information to PSN to keep available to the residents. Email notification that the bills are available. As soon as we upload the billing information, the individual residents will get an email, those that have subscribed to it, a notification that the bill is ready to be paid. And then one of the cost-saving measures that this provides us is the ability for them to opt out of paper billing, therefore not receiving the postcard in the mail. And so I'm really excited about that. Benefits to the city, reduction of bill preparation costs when residents do opt out of receiving paper bills. I've provided the cost analysis that will show that savings for you. Reduce calls to the sewer billing department regarding account history information. I don't expect a significant amount of those to drop off immediately because a lot of people will be unfamiliar with the PSN software, the online. That may actually increase, but eventually, as people become familiar with it, they will go there instead of to us for that information. This does have the benefits of reducing, and I expect hopefully significantly, the number of delinquent accounts through the use of the auto calling feature, which is part of the proposal I have in front of you, that you have in front of you. This auto calling feature, essentially what we do is we upload all the accounts and then they will receive a robocall with a specific recording that tells them that their account that qualifies for shut-off process, in which case then they have the ability at that time to press 0 and get directed to a call center operator that will accept their payment, or it will actually spur action to let them know that they really need to look at this and make a payment so that they can avoid that process. We're looking at it, it will also immediately reduce labor costs in the Treasurer's Department. Because what happens is, when we go over to PSN, they will immediately be transferring payment, over the phone payment calls for regular payments to PSN's call center. And so there's immediate savings based on, and actually in my cost analysis, I actually have it listed at $583.04, and that's based on our current numbers. I expect those savings to be immediate. And then, again, one other item is the ability to allow online access to accounts from those individuals that are listed on the account. Indirectly, landlords are able to go onto eBay with the account number and see balance history or balances on the account. But they're not really, they can't really see payment history, billing history. And they own the property. They're ultimately responsible for bills or balances left behind by delinquent tenants. And so this is an added benefit to them as well. One of the few issues, and not really an issue but it's a con, is the increase in percentages charged to the resident. We currently do not take on the cost of the fees. The fees are passed along to the resident through ePay, whether over the phone or online. That fee is going to increase, but that's why I put the spreadsheet in front of you that goes through the percentages with the current ePay merchant service fees. I gave you the fee structure. I gave you what the range of fees are. I gave you what the current percentage is, and you can see that the left column where it says percentage charged from actually is higher than 2.75%. For the lower part of that range, the higher part, of course, is in most cases lower than 2.75. And then there is also a 50-cent surcharge for payments or bills that are under $100 or less. But I see that this is a win-win. It is a convenience to those that want to use credit cards for payment. As you can see, 90% of our residents are still mailing us checks, so this affects a very minimal amount of our residents, actually right below 2%. This is going to affect that, of course, based on our projections with current users of PSN. We expect those to go up to about 10% of our accounts. But again, those are going to be residents that want the convenience of using credit cards for payments. Any questions?
What, do you just have a ballpark what you think the per fee or the fee would be? I mean, average sewer bills are about what? I just was curious as how it compares to like Cameron and Cameron.
The usage for the residents is so sporadic. I mean, there's highs and lows. I mean, if you wanted an average, I'd probably put in between the 50 and 75 range for sewer and trash. And that's actually the range where there is if you look at that line, if you look at that chart, it's the fourth line from the top. $1.88 is the current ePay fee for online payments. And for the low end at $50, that's 3.76%. Whereas at the $75 range, $75 bill, that's 2.51%. And that would be a flat 2.75 plus 50 cents. So it's, I mean, if you want to look at it from a cost amount standpoint, $1.88 is the fee. If you look at the charges from line for 2.75% plus 50 cents equals $1.88. It's exactly the same. And if you look at what the high side would be, it's $2.56. So right at under 68 cents.
That compares to water, not the fee that they charge.
I think like $1.50 is their convenience fee, plus the percentage, I think, I'm not sure.
It's like $1.95.
Right.
So it's comparable, and I think people would like this.
Well, the additional services that this is going to provide is where I really see this being a really win for residents.
So according to the proposal, then, the initial cost is going to be $23.44 to set all this up.
Correct.
And then after that, it'll be a yearly cost of $36.27.80.
And that's estimated.
Sure.
A lot of the variable there is the auto calling service. This is going to be dependent, and I expect this, of course, as we start using this, we're going to see an upswing on this, but this is based on 4,600 calls. And I took that 4,600 based on the number of delinquent accounts that we have, and I came up with an average of what we could expect to use of that service. And of course, because most people just need to be reminded that they're delinquent to pay their bill. And the fact that because when we initially send a letter out to individuals that are past due on their sewer bills, we get we send out 25 a day, and by the time it gets to the end of the 14-day period where they have the ability to pay us back without getting shut off, we're down to around 1 or 2 accounts. Rarely are we over 5 that actually haven't paid us and need to be shut off. This is going to create the ability to notify everybody at once, rather than having to wait 25 a day. So this is going to be a good trigger to get people a good swift kick in the butt to get going and pay us some money. Yes.
Okay, their proposal says they will work with your staff about getting the word out. And we talked about putting articles in the newsletter
Correct.
and various things like that.
Right, I already drafted the letter,
Oh,
the newsletter article, so.
Okay, and is there room right now to put anything on the postcard sewer bill?
Yes.
Okay, so is that part of the plan then?
Yes.
So people-
I'm gonna rewrite what's currently on the sewer bill now to be the first line I'm just gonna say, we now accept Visa. That's gonna be and it's gonna be in bold letters. And then it's gonna direct them to our website, which is going to guide them to to PSN.
Okay, and one of the things we talked about in the previous committee meeting was, this is kind of generational. That
Correct.
the younger the person, the more interested they are in getting their bills online.
Correct.
So this is not necessarily a first step in forcing people to take online billing. It's just offering them options.
Gives them the ability to do so. That's why when you see the opt-out paper bills line item, 332 to 498, 20 to 30%, knowing the average age of our resident, where they are, I use the lower number.
Okay.
I use 332 as the guide to determine what our savings are on postage.
That want to come pay their bill in person.
Right,
I know, I'm trying to pay her mortgage in person every month.
right.
So once this is approved, then how quickly will it go in?
Well, of course, it has to go to the committee, the council, and once they approve it, again, I've already got the article written. I would ask that we implement, so during the month of April, they say it takes about 3 to 4 weeks to transition and get everything in place. So I would actually expect that we'll go live fiscal year May 1.
Dean, is this been negotiated, or is this just their proposal?
This is their proposal. It's in line. I used to negotiate the credit card fees for my previous employer. And this is in line with what they
Do you
charge.
feel this $90 a month is $89.95? Do you think that that's in line?
For the
Monthly
system
charge.
account management fee, I do, given what they're doing for us.
Seems pretty high. I mean, it's all,
Well, someone has to be there to receive our file, make sure that it's updated correctly, their system is managed.
I mean, I'm going on what you were saying. If you feel that this is a good product, it just seemed $90 seems a monthly fee seems pretty high.
Well, in all reality, we're not paying them anything beyond this and services that we generate expenses based on our usage.
Well, I mean, if I have a MasterCard, I don't have a business here, if I got a business, maybe, but it's around is 2.75, I think, right, percentage?
Correct.
And then if the average bill is under 50 cents, I mean, under $100, the average bill is under $100, it's gonna cost another 50 cents per payment, plus the 2.7,
Mhm.
plus the $90 a month. It just seems, there's a lot of nickels and dimes adding up. What is this gonna do with our labor in your office?
Can we clarify, are you asking if the $90 a month is gonna be put on the resident or the?
No, I understand that, that's our, I
Okay.
understand that. But what is the effect that this can have on our labor, your labor in your office?
It's going to have an immediate impact on my treasury department. I mean, again, I've already calculated that we're looking at an immediate savings of $583.04. You know, that's just expected to grow. Because that labor cost is spent directly on accepting over-the-phone payments in my department.
So you're gonna save $500 per month?
You know, that's annual.
So we're gonna spend this amount of money to save $500 and, I mean,
Well, no, we're spending that much money to provide additional services to our residents. And additionally give them
so
the
this really isn't
opportunity.
a cost saving effect, this is a service that we want to improve the service given to the residents of Dublin. But it's not really per se a cost.
Well, the biggest item that, you know, I can assure you, Jamie was getting these emails just as myself, why don't we accept Visa? Why don't we accept Visa? Why don't we accept Visa? And that in itself is a benefit to the residents. And it's worth the money.
It's a convenience for the residents. I'm not,
And that's why they're paying fees for accepting the Visa card.
we would be paying those fees.
No, we're not.
No,
The only thing we're paying is the $89 a month.
so the customer would pay.
The merchant services fees are paid by the resident. And that's why it's called a convenience fee, because we're providing the convenience to use a credit card to pay their sewer and trash bill.
And Ameren, Illinois American Water, and Charter all charge a convenience fee if you use a debit or credit card online. Well, I think they do it free online, some of them do.
And
If you already get your driver's license, you pay that little fee?
Yeah, you pay that
They're not
fee,
going down
so.
there?
I mean,
Driver's license bureau doesn't accept Visa card either because they use that money to pay.
Then who assesses that fee? We assess that fee or the credit card company?
It's already scheduled to be 50 cents plus $2.75 for bills under $100 and just 2.75% for bills over $100.
So when they pay their bill, they'll pay that extra 50 cents?
Yeah, it's through the credit card company, not us.
Okay.
Right. We don't collect that fee. That money does not come to the city of Belleville. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Dean, can residents opt back into paper billing if they choose to?
Yes, sir. And even if they have to call us to do it. Now, the one thing that this company is not going to provide, because of the quantity of residents that use it, is direct debit from checking accounts. That is going to stay in-house, and that has no fees. We do not charge individuals right now to take money directly out of their checking accounts. We will not move that practice over to PSN. That's going to stay in-house. So if someone wants to save money and yet still have the convenience of having the money directly debited from the checking account, they can still sign the form, provide me a voided check, and we'll set that up directly in-house, and that happens for no fees. The one item that we did not talk about, which is on the spreadsheet, is e-checks with PSN. It's not a percentage, it's $1 per transaction.
That's $2.10?
No, $1 per transaction if they want to use e-check or e-savings to pay the bill.
Alderman Schmidt?
I'd like to make a motion that we, in favor of the agreement with Payment Services Network and forward it to the full council with the encouragement that they support.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Alderman Seibert? Any other discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call. Schmidt?
Aye.
Randall?
Aye.
Davidson?
Aye.
Seibert?
Aye.
Galletti?
Aye.
Musgrove?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Mayor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, next item, budget discussions.
Okay, I know you've all been anxiously awaiting this part of the meeting. What I'm gonna do is, like in prior years, I'm gonna start giving a general description of some of the main budgets and then open it up for questions. So just bear with me for a few minutes. Each of you received a packet like this, actually pretty much just about a month ago at the finance meeting. It has a memo on the top. This is the general fund packet. It has the general fund budget, some supporting documentation that has been requested to be done in the past, so I did it again. To give a brief synopsis about the budget process, we generally start the budget process mid-November. We start sending out requests to department heads to start formulating their budgets. The department heads turn in these budget requests mid-December. We start inputting them in my office. I estimate revenues in January and get first drafts to see how far apart we are the first go around. In my 5 years here now doing the budget, that first round has never come out balanced. It just doesn't happen. Everybody obviously turns in their requests for everything that they need and want, and inevitably it can never all be funded. What we do then is when we know how far apart we are, we call meetings with the department heads to look at their budgets again and try to trim back wherever they can possibly do that and still provide the services that we're accustomed to. Then we reevaluate revenue to see if anything has changed since the first initial evaluation, and then we keep repeating that process until we're balanced. This time it took us probably 4 or 5 rounds. The first round we were about $2 million apart. Next year's proposed budget is very tight and conservative. We're estimating that the surplus in the general fund for that given year is $5,058. We've had it much less than that. I think one year I had it down to about $500. It's been more than that. But that's pretty tight and conservative. The revenue numbers, pretty conservative. What I'm going to do, this first sheet here shows you a general overview of the general fund by department. No one department changed too dramatically. Public safety, which is our fire department and police department combined, last year's budget made up 57.37% of the budget. This year it's 58.06%. So that increased almost 1% as a total of the entire budget, but pretty much most of the departments stayed consistently taking up the piece of the pie that they have been the last several years. Personnel expenditures, which are salaries, insurance, and other benefits, make up 76.3% of the total budget. And most of this is set by union contract, which are previously approved through the next fiscal year. The current year we're in right now, we're projected to receive about 99% of the budgeted revenues. We're on track to spend only about 98% of the budgeted expenditures. And while that seems like not a wide margin, 1% of a $27 million budget is a pretty good margin. So we're projected to end the year pretty well. I know a lot of people bring up the fact that income tax income is doing much better now, so why aren't we in a better position? State income tax money from the state is up this year. We're projecting to receive probably about $300,000 more than was originally budgeted last year at this time. Obviously, the state's been trying to catch up. They have caught up on a few payments. They're staying now consistently 1 to 2 months behind instead of sometimes 4 or 5 months behind. But part of my job is not looking at just one piece of the pie, especially one piece of the revenue pie. It's looking at everything. As talked about earlier in this meeting, we have another piece of revenue, the telecommunications tax, that's down $300,000. So that wipes that out pretty much right there. Our sales tax is also, we're projecting to receive about $250,000 less than we had budgeted last year. While a lot of our months haven't been down dramatically, most of them have been pretty stagnant instead of increases, and we've had a couple months that were down pretty good. The last couple months we've been back up. It's kind of hard to project. There's no one fact that we know that led to any major decreases, but it's still just a recovering economy, and I think last year we had a little bit of a boom of recovery, and now things are starting to even back out. But overall, like I said, we are on track to receive about 99% of our revenues that were budgeted, which is actually pretty good, considering some of the things that have come our way, like the telecommunications tax decrease. And hopefully that revenue audit that you guys approved tonight will help with some of these figures being down, but it's hard to estimate until that audit is done, and I'm not going to count on that they're going to find all sorts of money, and we're going to be in a much better place. We'll just encounter that as it comes. So right now, we've for most of the revenues next year, we've only estimated very conservative increases unless other factors are known, i.e. there are some grants that will be finished this year, are finished. Our previous COPS grant, we've drawn down all that money. That won't be there next year. The fire department SAFER grant that's been going on for 4 years is over, so we won't be drawing down any of that money. So there's some revenues that have decreased, some that I'm projecting conservative increases to. So overall, our estimated total general fund revenues for next year are up 0.65% from the current year budgeted revenues. And while that doesn't seem like a huge increase, our next year's expenditures budget, we're requesting an increase of only 0.84%. And I think this is probably the most important fact of anything you guys take away from this discussion tonight is, in my years of being here, we've never had such a small increase in our expenditure budget. Especially considering most personnel expenditures, as I noted, are going up at least 2% by union contract. So with personnel, our biggest hunk of our budget going up over 2%, we're still in total only increasing expenditures 0.84% for the whole year. That's, in my opinion, just a testament to our department heads and staff really trying to keep costs down and stay kind of on board with working as a team to make sure we get through these financially tough years. I think most departments discuss budgets as requested at committee meetings, so I'm not going to go into a lot of heavy detail by department. Unless there are specific questions, obviously we'll address them, and you can see the department heads are here. They're ready to address any questions you have. Something I did hand out with that first general fund packet, there's a narrative that discusses the major changes in general fund departments and general fund lines. Probably won't read this word for word. You guys have had it for a while. I'm sure you've read it. But just to go down some of the major changes in departments, administration is actually down overall. The maintenance service equipment in prior years have been included in maintenance fees paid on our phone systems, but now that we were with Windstream, all those have kind of been combined. So telephone expense might have gone up a little, but it's actually these two lines combined now. Other professional services is decreasing due to the arbitration with the fire union being finished and paying those that outside legal counsel. The utilities budget for next year is actually down from the current year, mainly due to savings we've been achieving by buying electricity outside of Ameren. It was approved several months ago, I think it was August, that starting in April we're going to be with a new electric company called Constellation, and the fixed rate we have with them is I think about 4.3, and we're currently paying about 6. So we're going to be realizing some significant decreases in our utility expenses. Plus, you know, we've done a lot of energy improvements with M360, and while it's been not the best project we've ever done, we should start realizing some of those utility savings over the next year now that those enhancements are in place. And we've talked about several times here with the copy machine bid that came up, rentals is decreased next year significantly due to the switching of the copy machine providers. I think in the administration budget alone, that one is down several $1,000s based on that one change. The police department, the overtime expenses are up next year in anticipation of pay rate increases by the contract and the addition of some extra events for the bicentennial celebrations. Extra parade, the Oktoberfest being quite a bit larger than it has been in previous years, anticipated I should say. And there is a vehicle budgeted next year for the police department to be paid for with the crime-free housing funds. That's been talked about at a couple different committee meetings, and you guys approved going out for bid of that vehicle last month. Fire department salaries have increased significantly. Yeah, the arbitration ruling came down, giving raises for all 3 years. We had kind of fought for and anticipated only raises for 2 of the years, so something we can't get around now. We got to pay the raises for all 3 years. And the vehicle line in the prior year showed $140,000, which was a down payment on the new fire truck, and obviously that's not going to be there again next year. Street department overtime is up, kind of the same types of issues as the police, increase in pay rates by contract. We're trying to anticipate snow events, which is pretty impossible to do. This year our overtime budget's been pretty much blown out with all the weekend events. And while we try to anticipate them next year and hope that there won't be as many, we're trying to at least cover it if there
We
are.
had more snows on Sundays and holidays than I ever would imagine, as far as double time. It just felt that way.
You can see sanitation, there's some decreases to unemployment insurance because an employee is not receiving unemployment anymore than it was, as well as last year. At this time, we discussed there was $125,000 in the budget for some trash toters that were needed for some new routes. And they're not anticipating needing that money again next year, so that number has decreased. Legal, this came up as a question, wanted to address it tonight. Professional services in the legal department, I am increasing based on just the idea that we're going to anticipate hiring outside counsel to fight St. Elizabeth's certificate of need should that fight come up and the council want to go forward with fighting that. It's not definite yet, but everything we still hear sounds like they are moving forward with that. And Garrett's recommendation is to hire an outside counsel that is much more well-versed in those types of litigations. And this was his best guesstimate of how much that may cost us. Obviously, if they don't move forward with that, we don't spend that money. Could be more, could be less. It's hard to say right now. Housing, we decreased other professional services because a lot of the demos we've been doing, which are paid out of this line, have been more and more out of TIF, and we do budget for demolitions in TIF. So where applicable, that they are in TIF, we pay for them out of TIF before the general fund. You can see the other changes, again, human resources. In prior years, I think we talked about Jim Schneider's salary was split between Parks and HR. Next year is the first full year that the budget reflects that it's just paid out of HR and community development. As well as some other professional services increasing slightly this year due to some new community development initiatives being started by that office. The clerk's office, we've already approved the new contract for the FOIA software, that's in there. And the engineering department is decreasing this year due to the $75,000 that was budgeted for the orchards work last year. So those were the major changes I noted when going through the budgets. Obviously, you guys might have seen something else that you think is significant, maybe didn't catch my eye. So of course, if you have any questions on any specific lines, we're more than happy to answer them, or any specific departments, they're all here to discuss. So we haven't really received many questions over the last 30 days of this being out, but now's a great opportunity. So if you have any questions on, let's keep it to just the general fund right now, and I'm going to move on and talk about some of the other funds after we have these discussions.
There's a couple of things I didn't know. What is risk management?
Risk management is an allocation to pretty much most all the departments, at least the major departments, for the premiums due on the workers' comp and liability insurance.
Okay. And data processing, did I see a lot?
Data processing, the main bill that ever comes out of there is if we have to have our software people, specifically, I know Locus, our accounting software people, ever come and do updates or anything like that, or if we're having an issue and they have to travel here to help us on their time, sometimes it's charged there. The general fund usually doesn't have as significant of an expense for data processing as like the sewer operations and maintenance. Do Do you guys have data processing, please?
Do you have some of that there, Donnie?
No, not.
Okay.
Was there a specific department you noticed that?
Sewer collections has the data processing, that's
That was just something I thought like risk management,
We
that I've
pay-
seen multiple times.
We pay American Water so much per record for our usage data for usage of water that we use to bill sewer on.
Yeah, and then, like we said, that's sewer operations and maintenance.
Okay,
There's usually,
well, I sit under clerks for $1,000.
okay, again, sometimes, yeah, if we have to call out Locus to help with issues, for instance, when Mary, our payroll person, is processing W-2s, having issues or whatever, and they have to come out, we might have a bill for $100 for their time to come out.
Okay, so we're in the general fund?
Yeah, for now, we'll move on to the
Okay,
other
what,
ones.
you have a line equipment for $5,000?
In which department, do you know, or which page you can talk about?
Okay, 0150, 83,000.
Okay. There's also a packet or a couple sheets that I handed out with the general fund that are all the capital expenditures. I know that's usually a hot topic, is what kinds of equipment are we buying, what kind of furniture, what kind of
Oh, okay.
vehicles. So these are all the equipment purchases out of the general fund. We see under administration, the mechanic that is housed down at 510 usually each year buys a little bit of equipment.
Diagnostic or
Yeah.
something, keep up to date.
As well as we budget a little bit, you can see it's just a little bit for computer IT equipment for our IT department if we need to buy hard drives, et cetera.
Okay, I thought dues was a really kind of surprisingly large, I don't know, how many organizations they
Dues and administration is mainly Chamber of Commerce dues. We pay an annual fee, separate from the data processing you said, which is kind of a as-needed basis with our accounting software. The user licenses that we pay every year are about $10,000 with our accounting software. So they call that's always been classified as dues, so that's where I take it out every year. But those are the two most significant ones. I think we also pay about $500 a year to be members in the sister cities in the municipal league, yes.
Okay, and unemployment insurance is another thing running through several different departments
Mhm.
that varies just depending on circumstances?
Yeah, most small businesses, if you guys have been involved with any payroll of small businesses, you know, usually every quarter you pay so much based on your wages for that quarter and a percentage that's assigned to you by the Department of Employment Security. The city does not participate like that, as do most municipalities or larger employers. We pay actual claims instead of a percentage on our payroll, because just we don't have a lot of
So
turnover.
2 years ago, it could have been a big amount, but that employees
Yeah.
portion is, okay.
When we
That's
had,
why it varies so much.
yeah, when we had layoffs a couple years ago, that number spiked, obviously.
When we laid off a number of people, our unemployment was up drastically.
And it's still, it's pretty unpredictable, because we could have never paid unemployment before, and all of a sudden we let somebody go and they file unemployment, we have to pay it. So we try to anticipate the departments we know we're gonna have a little bit in, but it's usually pretty
We
unexpected.
fight some of them, and you don't win when you think you should. And a couple of times we've won, and we've kind of looked at each other like, well, I'm surprised. So, you know, we do state our case. It's usually a phone hearing that Jim or some of us handle. Sometimes the attorney's involved, and we legitimately, you know, try to represent the city and question all this, but it's been a crapshoot, to say the least.
Okay, and the difference between publishing and printing, publishing is something, notices we're having to pay the newspaper for?
Correct.
Well,
Right.
statute.
Printing is more if we need, you know, the administration needs letterhead, essentially, business cards, that type of thing is printing.
And fees and permits, who are we paying fees and permits to?
The biggest thing with those are lien fees that we pay to the county that we collect back.
Do we have something to IDNR though, Tim?
Not so much out of administration.
Okay.
Fees and permits is really, if we have to charge a lien fee and we'll collect it back, there's a revenue line up there for lien fees when we collect that money back.
Okay, and rentals is another thing I see throughout. One thing you already mentioned was porta potties. I'm assuming that comes up, not necessarily in a general fund, but.
Well, the general fund, probably in the parks department, that's where you're gonna get the porta potties and the rentals. It varies based on which department you're talking about. For instance, like I mentioned, in administration, the copy machines, pretty much every department is their machine specifically for their department, and the usage is paid out of the rentals line. It could be other things, the police department, I think part of the user licenses with the new records management system is paid out of the rentals line. It really depends which department you're talking about, because they can vary significantly.
There's a couple other ones I'm trying, one other ones, guys, occasionally there's a piece of equipment we have to rent. Might be something from Foley rental or something we would create, or some of the guys, or between maintenance and the street department, our parks sometimes there's certain things that we need that we don't stock that tool or have a need to have it all the time, and they will have to go rent something from there.
Okay, disaster expenses. I'm sorry I missed the very first part of the conversation in the last committee about that, but it's a fairly significant line item for general fund for proposal.
The bulk of what we pay out of that line right now is repairs to the tornado sirens. That eats up most of that number.
Which is something down the road we're gonna have to look at. System we put in the year I got on the council in '97, and that's where the biggest part of that line item goes, is to repairing the existing tornado sirens, keeping them up and running.
We've also updated a lot with our emergency operations center, and equipment and stuff they've needed has come out of that line in the past.
And is that the calls that we use, like when?
The HyperReach is also,
Yeah.
HyperReach is paid out of, let's see, 0159-1300 community relations. You can see in the year for the current, or the column for the current year, 14 to 16,000. That's the only amount we've paid thus far. The budget amount, that is the HyperReach annual payment.
And that's not only for STARS, but that's for callback of fire department and for police department, and for some of the other things you've heard about, these special, when we've used it for a lost child in a certain region, or et cetera. So that's what that is there.
So that's mostly what that community relations
Yes.
is HyperReach?
Yeah, there's some of that. We also reimburse the schools a little bit for crossing guards. We make a donation to PSOP out of that line. ATS, the Alternative Transportation System, through SWIC, we make a contribution out of that line. It's a multitude of things that make up that $89,000 budget, but $16,000 of it is the HyperReach payment.
But the disaster, going back to disaster, we're adding a little bit each year to equipment in the EOC. We've stockpiled some, as you know, of the freeze-dried type food and water, trying to rotate it, but be prepared if we have a disaster. And we've also, just in the buildings, first aid kits, emergency lighting, we've been adding, trying to get a better handle on preparedness in each of our buildings. So there's been some increases that we needed to slowly get where we want to go. Because years past, we had nothing in that line item.
Any other questions about the general fund before I move on? Obviously, again, nothing is getting voted on tonight. I want to make that very clear. These are still just drafts. I will have to put out drafts for public inspection by the end of this week, so that the public has a month to look over all the budgets and have a comment period. We will have a public hearing on the budget in April. I think we usually do it right before the finance meeting. And then it will be voted on, all the drafts will be voted on at the April finance meeting, and then the April council meeting, second April council meeting. So obviously, if you don't have questions tonight, something comes up tomorrow, next week, the week after that, just let me know.
Jamie, I have a question. I don't know if this is the area to ask it, but in terms of like the cemetery, are we doing better with that?
In my mind, the cemetery is never going to be a revenue generator. it's, the revenue that it generates nowhere meets the expenditures that it generates. Now,
The cemetery's better because we've made adjustments in staffing in the last 5 years, Chuck. Really, we did, we started probably in 2008, but then when the bottom fell out of the economy, we even did more. And so we have adjusted staff, and we've made a number of adjustments at the cemetery trying to better offset the deficit. But keep in mind, the cemetery business has changed drastically. You have 2 local funeral homes now in this area that have cemeteries that are putting together packages and things of this nature with the funeral home and with cremation and with all these things. And the industry's changed. The number of burials we do per year has consistently gone down. Dean and I have had some conversation. We are trying to, and we're going to try to have a meeting with some of the local funeral homes who aren't attached to a cemetery to maybe talk about ways we can do better. But it's just a trend that's happened slowly for a long time. But our cemetery, we made some improvements out there in the last 8, 9 years. We spent some money, as many of you on this council remember, in the chapel and several things. The lake was scummed over. We put an aerator in there, and we've done some things that have really improved. And Walnut Hill. And the other thing we've done is in the contracts, Jim and I and Chuck have negotiated. There's a lot more flexibility with the unions now to be able to use those men other places. Years ago, it was kind of a no-no to move them around. Now we have the flexibility when they're not needed there in some cases, just like snow shoveling. Chuck took them to rotate on the plows because we don't have the number of men we used to have in the street department. And when you're running 24-hour day operation, as we have many days this winter, those guys out of the cemetery came into the street department, all have their CDL, all have experience, many of them previously worked in the street department and plowed. So we have, I guess the best word is, Jim, we've cross-trained a lot more people, and the unions have been very cooperative in the past 5 years.
And a lot of, we have more part-time people too.
Yeah, we also have gotten permission for more part-time people than we ever had before. So that's some major significant changes that have saved us. But we had to do it in a slow process, and we've made great strides working with the unions on those issues.
Can I ask what the meter division of the police department is?
we used to have, I think, we used to have a separate meter department that had a couple employees that went out, and that was their full-time job, going out and doing that. That was a few $100,000 a year department. We eliminated that a few years ago. It was taken over by the police department. So they do still have some expenditures along with that, tickets, the replacement of meters as they go bad, those type of things. So they do have much smaller budget than was.
Okay, so that's why it was 0 for a couple of years, but now it's just rolled into that.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, you want to move on to the next?
Yeah, and again, feel free to contact me with any questions that come up after this meeting. I'm more than happy to answer them. Okay, the next packet you guys got a couple weeks ago, the much bigger packet. This is every fund except the general fund. So a lot of these funds are quite little, don't have hardly any activity. I'm not going to sit here and go through every single one of them unless you guys insist that I do. A lot of them have no activity, or hardly any activity, I should say. We have, for instance, a fountain fund that pays the water bill, the fountain, and small maintenance. So there's not much to it. If you have specific questions about any of those, I'd be happy to answer them. But I'd like to hit mainly upon the TIFs because those are usually the most questioned and talked about of any of the other funds besides the general fund.
Can you talk about pensions also?
Sure. You want to start with those?
Well, it's disturbing to see a big projected deficit.
And something I want to make clear, I should probably add a note on those. For those pension accounts, that is the budget of the cash. That is totally separate of all the investments that they hold.
Okay.
Okay, because I can't project what they're gonna make
Okay.
you know, their
They're getting
capital
better,
gains
but-
and everything.
Yeah.
So you can see most years, if you go back, they usually look like that because we're not projecting gains in the investments. That is just strictly the cash account, the contributions that come in and the bills and the pension payments that go out.
Okay.
No fluctuation in
So
the
you're not
investments.
setting up a problem, you're just doing the best you can with the cash.
Right,
Okay,
right.
got it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this year, one of them is on track to gain probably about 2 million in the investment account. So you can see that far outweighs the small cash decrease. So those are kind of hard to present the budget, so I just stick to strictly the cash instead of trying to guess what the investments are gonna do. But
I did notice that I mentioned to Jamie and the current tax levy went down for this current year, but she said that's based on the numbers from the actuary.
yes,
Because I wondered why it would go down when we
right,
have some deficits, but it's based on that.
right. When we pass the tax levy in December, usually November, we get the actuary reports from the state and the independent actuary that does the study. They tell us the minimum required contribution and a recommended contribution. We usually stick with what the pension boards request based on those reports. I think one of them went down this year and the other one went up significantly. So can't remember which is which. I think the police may have went up, the fire went down. So it just depends each year how the investments do and how many people go out on pension leave or disability or all those factors are taken into consideration. Was there any other questions about the pensions?
The library fund also was showing a big deficit.
Yeah. If you look, the library fund, and sorry if I'm not trying to ignore some of you, the library fund is 04. You're probably about 5 pages in. It's a bigger packet. It shows the summary at the top that shows 04, the library fund. If you look over the last couple of years, which is why I usually show this summary, between 11-12 and 12-13, the library fund gained about $200,000. They've received some one-time contributions, one large one specifically from someone who passed away and left them a sizable donation in the trust for improvements. We know they're getting ready to go through all their improvements that were approved with a state grant. They're essentially doing a little more than the grant provides, so that's why they're eating back through some of those reserves they've built up the last couple of years for that. So you can see they're going to end, again, this is all based on if the projections match and if we get every revenue and spend every dollar of expenditure, they're still going to end next year at about $592,000, which is still more than they were at just a couple of years ago.
Okay, and they have a really large data processing.
Lee, do you
That
want-
is fees for databases that we subscribe to, mainly.
Also notice on that first page, something that jumped out at me was the maintenance service. Jumped from 1,500 to 40,000. But then, after talking with Jamie, and that is that they combined all those other ones and it's just running it through that first one of building.
Yeah, you can see there were 4 maintenance service lines that kind of broke it down in more detail. And the office staff there just requested they could have just 1 maintenance service line. So you can see it went from a budget of about, or those 4 lines, it was about 35,000, and next year they're requesting 40. So it looks odd because some of those other lines are blank and that one went up significantly, but they're just requesting to merge those.
I was a little surprised you're cutting back on genealogy. I thought that was a very popular thing in the library.
Again, that is misleading. We don't actually cut it back on genealogy. This year, we combined the records department and genealogy department. So now there's one combined line item instead of 2 separate line items.
Any of the other small funds we want to talk about before we get to the tips? Or, I mean, we can always come back after this discussion to your tips on whatever you guys want to do. I would like to start, again in this packet, there is an attachment attachment that is the capital expenditures. And this one says at the top, all funds, not just general fund. The general fund's gonna be shown again, but it does, the packet's a little bit bigger and it lists all capital expenditures, every fund. And I'm sure most of you know the capital expenditures are essentially fixed assets, equipment, cars, furniture, road improvements, land acquisitions, those type of things. So this shows every fund what, if they have anything budgeted for a capital expenditure, what it is, gives a breakdown. That's usually one of the most questioned items. If you flip essentially to page 3 of that, it starts going through each tip individually. You can see tip 1, the main item budgeted in that tip is $45,000, which would be the final payment per the YCA improvement with Kurt Artinger. We had.
So not the actual, like, see. the
No.
No, this is the, tip 1 is the first block or 2 on West Main.
Yeah, and based on that development agreement that was passed a year or so ago, we've made, I think 1 or 2 payments this year for that development agreement and for the roof, and that should be finalized with that final $45,000 payment next year. And that pretty much uses pretty much every dollar that tip 1 has. It's very small. Yeah. Tip 2 is just a proposal in here that passed this committee tonight for the downtown lights for $25,000. And you can see we get to tip 3, which takes up about a page. The other item with tip 3 that I included in your packets is there's essentially a breakdown, another attachment that lists every single expenditure out of tip 3 that is budgeted for next year. Because so many items are combined in each line, I wanted to give a breakdown of every single one. So it's the attachment that at the top says tip 3, parentheses 138. It's stapled 3 pages at the back of that packet. Everyone see where I'm at? I see some confusion, so wait a minute. This essentially gives a breakdown by line of every single project budgeted in the tip, not just the capital expenditures, but every line. Like you see the engineering services for all the different projects, the other professional services, which includes demolitions, consulting. There's the rebate line is business incentives that are already approved for development agreements, as well as the school payments that come out annually. We have budgeted for now, until we have more concrete numbers, a principal payment of $1 million towards the new police station this year, plus about $75,000 of interest. The land is the land acquisition that should hopefully finish up the North Illinois Streetscape project. There's several vehicles proposed in there, especially the police vehicles that you guys have already approved going out for bid.
I want to comment on the vehicles if I can in a second. Every department head wanted more vehicles. But when we first sat down and took a look at tip 3, we were what, almost $4 million over the first round? We had to each have a talk. Now, Chief Clay's still getting more vehicles this year than probably he's ever gotten. But we had to cut him back from what, when they first make their wish list, they all know, come in and dream. Come in and ask for what you would hypothetically like if you possibly could get it. A couple of them, I cut out trucks. I mean, after this winter, I felt bad limiting Chuck to 1 salt and ice truck unit, but they're, what was it, 140,000?
Yeah, and technically we even show that the proposal would be to, like we have for sanitation trucks in the past, get a short-term lease, because the interest rates right now with banks are pretty much next to nothing, and pay that over 3 years instead of all up front.
There's a couple, I did approve a couple pickup trucks in a couple departments. We whacked a couple out of the proposals, but a couple of them are rusted so bad, they look so pathetic, I'm embarrassed to have them with the city of Belleville written on the side of them. So there's some stuff, equipment that we did sit down and talk together, but we made cuts because the TIF budget was really tough this year. There's a lot of projects, there's a sizable amount of money we're paying back to the state for our matches that are coming due, and there's some projects that were, once again, Now, the firehouse payment and 510, we made the last payment in August, I think it was, and that's where, as you know, I made mention, when the editorial said I had no plan for the new police station, that's not true, because we had been budgeting $900,000 a year for the last number of years for Firehouse 4 and 510 West Main. We feel comfortable that as long as TIF 3 is here, which is, we got, what do we figure, 9, 10 payments left by the time you go to 2022. If we only would go with $1 million a year, you've got 10 million of the projected thing right there. There's some ways, I think, we got another bond that's going to be going away in a couple of years. We'll have $200,000 a year that we can plan towards that. And we're working on that finance package to bring to you. But there is a number of things in this budget we had to tighten our belt. As you know, also, there's what, 1.2 million going into wastewater.
Yeah, all the TIFs combined are contributing a total of 1.2 million to sewer construction.
To keep those loans down, even though we had to raise rates. Without that TIF payment, we'd have to raise rates more. Correct, Jamie?
Yes.
So, I mean, we are making a sizable contribution to the wastewater treatment with the TIF fund, or the TIF funds, but mostly TIF 3. And that is continued. The firehouse lease, the fire truck lease you see on there, and a number of things. Now, these bike trails, a lot of these things are done after this year. Our match, a number of these commitments that we made to some of these projects.
Yeah, some of the projects you'll see in there, for instance, the Citizens to Bellevue Trail, that is a rollover from the current year. It's not in addition to what we had budgeted this year. For instance, we're in the middle of that one. We know after May 1st, we should have about another $460,000 to pay on that, instead of, I think, the original budgeted $700,000 this year. So it's not in addition to what was in the budget this year. Most of those are just rolling it over from year to year. You can see there listed under streets some of the road projects, other improvements, some of the pots of money that are allocated to asphalt patch program, sidewalk program, concrete patch, some of the bike trail improvements, some of the grants we've received. You can go down the list if you have specific questions, just let me know. The very last kind of group on the third page that's reimbursements, you can see from that, those are items, dollars we're going to be getting back, either grant funds. Like I say, most of them, if not all of them, are grant funds. For instance, under other improvements, there's the Southside Park Development OSLAD grant, $685,000. We had to spend $685,000, we're going to give back $335,000. So those are all reimbursements that, as projects are done, we will get back. So those are budgeted into the revenue lines.
So all that goes back to TIF.
TIF 3, correct. So,
And I think Jamie needs to reiterate, this is a very aggressive TIF budget this year, but as all these years, we never have gotten to, it's been very unusual that we got to implement everything.
no.
This year, for example, we had the TIF budget down to,
We usually every year budget pretty aggressively for projects, anticipating hopefully that we'll get to all of them, get to do all of them. Obviously, things come in under budget, some things come in over budget. I think last year this time we were showing a TIF 3 budget that was going to project that at the end of this year we were going to have about $280,000 left in it. We're probably going to have about $2.8 million. It's just projects don't all get done.
sometimes they get carried over.
Just time constraints, essentially. So,
Land acquisition, some of
yeah.
these things cause them to shift into the following year.
So if you look at the summary sheet for TIF 3 in your packets, it'll show you that, yeah, next year, we're projecting at the end of the year, we might only have $150,000 left. But again, we're budgeting pretty aggressively that's if we do every single one of these projects and they come into the penny of what we're budgeting. And it's never happened since I've been here, but we put everything in there that we think we may get to, so that if we do get to it, it's in the budget. But
We also keep in mind, as we do these budgets with the department heads, you know, we try to, as best as we can, look at need first of all. They have an opportunity to come to us and talk about safety concerns, where it's costing us more money to, if we don't address something, you know, we don't want to be wasting money. And then we do try to, as much as possible, try to spread some of these projects out. It wouldn't be fair to take the majority of the TIF 3 budget. TIF 3 stretches out, as you know, over a vast part of the entire length of the city. But if we were to spend it all in one ward, it would be very unfair. Now, some years, there's a few wards that have gotten a much bigger chunk than others. Some wards don't get a real big chunk because there's not very much of TIF 3 in their ward. And that's a problem. When the city fathers established TIF 3 and they carved out some big areas, maybe it seemed like the right thing for them to do then, but now, where some of you would really like some of these roads fixed, et cetera, in some of your wards, the general fund is just not the way we're set up. And I'm open for suggestions. If somebody has a new way of funding, tax is a horrible, dirty word to everybody, but unless something comes up that we're going to find some new resources for fundings, and believe me, Eric and all of us are constantly, the fire department, the police department, all of us together are going after every grant we can, but they have shriveled up a lot in recent years. There are not as many. And believe me, even though our state and our federal government aren't in great shape, I have dialogue regularly with our elected officials trying to shake every extra dime or dollar we can and bring it back to Belleville. That's my job, to try to lobby for the funds that we can get for our city. As the county seat, we do have a lot of extra people coming through our city and putting, you know, wear and tear on our stuff. That's great. We love being the county seat, but we're trying to lobby for as much funding sources as we can get, and believe me, we're doing it. But this budget is, the TIF budget, TIF 3, does spread it out throughout much of the city, and it's based on, you know, things that we see that we think we need to get accomplished to finish some of these projects.
And there is, while we're talking about TIFs, since this draft packet came out to you, there is already one TIF budget that we're proposing to change before it's finalized. If you'll flip to TIF 12, which is Fund 54, it's about halfway through your packet. The sheet like this says page 70 in the top right corner. That helps at all.
We got looking at this. Alderman Kinsella came to me several weeks ago, and I went on a ride with him to show me a street that was really in bad shape. And while the beginning part of the street's in TIF 12, the street needs a lot of drainage work, and the street has really deteriorated. But we finally sat down just the last day or so with staff. We determined that not a whole lot of that project legally was in TIF 12. And the drainage, some of the biggest drainage problems actually were caused from a different direction. So what we did discover in a little research is that that whole project is in CDBG.
And we're talking about, we're still going to do the C Street roadway and drainage out of TIF 12. that
Because
shows on your
we're
capital
convinced
expenditure
that
sheet.
the majority of that, the big part of that is in TIF 12, but a lot of it isn't. But if we double check with Norbert, it is, the drainage there is a big part of what Royce is doing with the CSO improvements, and the drainage that's going back on that street is caused by 12, so we feel justified, and Norbert says that's a justification that we're, you know, doing that. But we're gonna on this other project on Bell,
Yeah,
we're gonna
it
propose
doesn't
it to go to
show,
CDBG.
it doesn't show on your capital expenditure sheet, because in the budget draft we presented, we do have the C Street roadway and drainage at $280,000. We'd also put in about $30,000 for engineering of East Bell improvements. But like we were talking about the last couple of days, instead of doing that out of TIF 12, that could be a CDBG project.
So we can apply for it, which that one has to be in when, Eric? Friday. It's coming up right now. But we had talked about a couple of them, but the street and the drainage is bad. and we feel like it's a good choice, so, that would be funded then first next year.
And how close is this to where we're gonna be drilling under the road?
Really on the
We
road.
talked about Royce near the,
No, that's about 3 blocks down.
okay.
Yeah, that's east of ways.
So what we're proposing for the change in this draft is taking the 30,000 out of line 54-00-53200, which is engineering. That was engineering for the East Bell improvements. Take that out. There was actually a list of several projects that were kind of on the list for this TIF down the road. The only other one that we could afford this coming year is some more ditching work. We've been doing several.
Ever since we did Dewey Detention a number of years ago, some of you may remember, my staff remembers Dewey Detention on the staff meeting for 3 years or more. But ever since we did Dewey Detention, we observed that as you go, I guess it's northeast of there, and you look at the watershed coming down, there was a lot of obstructions in the ditching. So we started several years ago, and I requested, and Tim started it, we phased it where we actually concreted the spillway, the spillway paths, got all that yuck and muck and cattails and all the debris that farmed in there and dug them out so that the water better flowed because it was sitting near those homes. There was mosquito problems, there was a host of problems, even health issues around a couple of those stretches. So we did, a couple of years ago, we did the first 40, then we did another $40,000. There's one stretch left to go. It's estimated to be maximum about 80,000. This will complete that all the way up to West Boulevard, and we feel like this is something that we ought to go ahead and commit to get done.
Yeah, with doing the East Bell project out of the CDBG, this TIP would be able to afford that $80,000. So I'll get those drafts revised and out to each of you.
I know Alderman Schneider was very concerned. She wanted that in there, and as of our final meeting today, we agree that that can stay in that budget, and then we will take the Bell Street request that there's been many complaints about flooding or water standing, et cetera, drainage, ditches clogged, and road improvements. We will take that and apply for a CDBG grant for next year.
Can we go back to tip 3?
Sure.
Okay, there's a lot of roofs we're having to fix. I'm very surprised to see a huge price tag on the Arlene Square building. Where are we on talking to them about paying rent?
But we're not, I think the committee agreed that we were going to talk about a contract that Garrett is working on. It's not ready yet, but I think if you go back in the minutes, what did the minutes of the finance meeting say? I just read them. We had them the other night.
Essentially to have Garrett looking at drawing up a contract for what we would, to lay out the specifics.
But we have always paid the building maintenance of the building. They have done anything inside. They put in a staircase. They did remodeling inside to things that they wanted more for aesthetics or for, using it for art shows, et cetera. But we paid for the air conditioning and we paid for,
Is this strictly roofing? Is this new trusses? This seems like a very high
No,
price.
that's to get a new roof on the building. $22,000 is the price I got a year ago. That was in this year's budget. I'm sorry?
How many square feet is this? Is it?
I don't have that estimate with me, but we're gonna bid it, so it's not like we're gonna go to one guy and say, do this for us.
it could come in hopefully a lot lower. And as you see many times, we use very, I think, conservative when we have our engineering or our staff estimates to make sure that we're budgeting enough. But I mean, hopefully it's going to come in a lot lower. But it needs to be done. It was actually in the budget for this year, but when we turned around and had an air conditioner go out, et cetera, we couldn't do the roof, so we got the air conditioner fixed, and it was a swapping around this year, and we held off on it.
Okay, pool demolition.
The pool demolition, there's some money in there, I believe. in that. And we are going to start with a plan. Chuck and I and Jason and Tim have all had some conversations. We're gonna see what staff can do, and then we'll have to hire out, but we are committed to start the pool demolition this summer and start to get it, it's not, demolition isn't cheap, as you know.
No, and it's a potential hazard for us.
And we need to be doing it, and it will start on the bathhouse and on the pool. We're not touching the concession stand at this time in the up top. And we continue to look and work with Parks Department and Community Development as well. There's a lot of neighborhood meetings talking about things that, and both those aldermen are here tonight. They've had a lot of contact with the residents. But we are committed to get a good start on pool demolition this year.
And I know it's a tricky thing, since we have a pool within a pool and electrics in there. Are there specialty companies we have to hire for this?
No, I don't think so. We don't do so. Yeah, we don't do so. It's concrete. Electricity's all been shut off.
Right.
And it's just.
So there's nothing we're gonna try to salvage?
No, and we're constantly looking, Tim's constantly got his eye out for other projects that are going on in the area. A lot of times these developers, when they do projects, are looking for a place to bring dirt. So we're gonna continue to have our antennas up to see if we can, once we get a timeline here, encourage some of them to come in with the clean fill that we're allowed to use per the EPA and fill it. So we're going to continue to make good on our promise. It's like everything, it's taking a little bit of time, it takes money, but we're ready to start this year.
I think I've hit most of the TIP projects I wanted to talk about.
Meredith Home, you might have read the article. They've been pressing me for days. Okay, after, we have had a couple of groups now. One group went through, was pretty interesting. I think Eric admitted that they had some, a group that had some experience. There was also another person that met with me to tell me that she and a group of people are working on another proposal. Can't guarantee it's going to come forward, but she's real serious about it. This particular lady is, we had a good meeting. It is something that has piqued my attention. More than some of them in the past that have just kind of scratched the surface. She's actually had quite a bit of research. When Jamie and I really got looking at this whole thing, and I looked at this year with the bicentennial events, it became very, I think, very clear that none of us want to tear down that building, even if nothing becomes of the proposals during 2013. There's just too much stuff focusing on our city. We're working hard to have very successful each and every event. And then when we finish the weekend celebration and we finish the chili cook-off, we go right into the Veterans Day, we go right into Christmas holiday. And the more I thought about it, I thought that, we're more likely so what I'm proposing, and I will bring it back to you maybe as soon as the next meeting next week, but I got to get with Garrett, he and I have talked. A proposal that it's outlined in this draft. At this point in this draft, there's no money in this budget to do the asbestos abatement and tear down the Meredith Home this next fiscal year. But it's kind of like, as I said before, we have a commitment to Mr. Cook. Now, I have not talked to Mr. Cook in recent days. He certainly, as everyone knows, had his plate full, and it was not appropriate. Now, what I stated in the paper, I felt very comfortable. Bruce Cook told me from the very beginning that if we could develop that property, he would certainly understand and be willing. When we couldn't develop the property is when he came forward. We've accepted his money. Garrett and I and others still feel very strong that we have an obligation to pay Mr. Cook back if we go another direction. What I'm going to propose to do, and what you're going to see hopefully by the next council meeting, is a proposal to extend the RFP process to maybe approximately November. To give them a little bit more time, since we, in my heart now, I think it's very clear, we're not gonna tear this building down during the bicentennial year. It's just not gonna happen. Maybe a couple of these interests that have come forward may have a little bit, this time may be valuable to them. A few things have happened that are different than they were several years ago. Several years ago, just recently, and I don't think I'm making any secret, it's on the listing, one of the buildings next door, one of the businesses is now for sale. It wasn't a couple of years ago when there was questions about going through the building, parking, etc. So I think that, you know, we'll give it a little bit more time. If nothing happens, what I'm going to come back and propose to this council then is that we would agree, if nothing firm comes forward, you know, and I hope it does, then next winter, the winter of 2015, we would resubmit the bids for demolition and asbestos abatement, understanding that after Artemis Square 2015, the new fiscal year 15-16, the building would then be torn down if we come up with nothing. But we would give it from May until approximately November or December 1st to give additional time to try to develop something that's feasible and substantial that could make it work. So that's what you're going to see from me in writing.
Would you clarify that a little bit? Do you intend to issue a different RFP or just extend the deadline on the
I think what we're going to do, and I'm going to talk to Garrett this week, I got some time with him tomorrow scheduled, and then again a block of time on Thursday. I think we're probably going to extend this RFP maybe with a couple slight variations in the RFP. I don't know that we're going to write a whole new RFP and spend, but we're looking at a couple of things. There was one other area Eric and I talked about adjusting, I guess. Is that fair to say, Eric? So I think that, you know, we've been listening and we're trying to be very cooperative, and I think it's a combination of things. This is a very unique year, bicentennial year, and I'm tickled to death that there's been some, quote, I think sincere is a good word to use, interest. Now, if they can muster up some real dollars, because as I said over and over, and I'll repeat it tonight, as mayor, my number one priority next is we have to fix this police department and ADA, the city hall, before we're hammered. This should be our one of our number one priorities. Now, if the right project comes along, will I be against working with them on something that could work out to be a win-win for the city? The answer is no. Do I see the city jumping into this thing and being the bigger partner? The answer is no. You know, it's got to have to come with a way of a plan that there's some money that they find, develop, allocate, you know, whatever, that it's got to have to be something that we can all live with. Belleville cannot be in the loft business, the hotel business, you know. We want to grow downtown. If we can save that building, I'm all for it. But if we can't, there's going to come a time that we have to make a decision about it, because it is, over time, something's got to be done. And we did accept this money a while back, and you know, so I think he's been very patient, Bruce, and we're going to have to, I'm going to try to sit down with Bruce, and I'm going to try to come to the council with that laid out in writing real soon. Okay? Thank you. I needed to say that.
Any other questions about any of the budgets? Again, you have a whole nother month before this comes up for even more discussion and a vote. Plenty of time to contact me with questions, concerns, comments, changes. But like I said, I haven't heard a lot, except some questions about clarification issues, which were really great. And I appreciate the feedback too. If there's any way I can improve on the information I get to you, I'm going for it. So, if there's other questions, then I can move that discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say in closing, I think you all agree with me that Jamie, once again, has done a heck of a job on bringing it to draft form just at this stage. And I also commend the staff for being extremely professional and extremely cooperative. When we first started some of these drafts, When she first came to my office the very first day, and we were 2 million over the general fund, and we were 4 million over on the TIF 3 fund, believe me, I sank in my chair, because it was like, oh my goodness, this is more than I had anticipated. We always have some, but this was we had some serious discussions among staff and Jamie and I, but we're here with, I think, is what's still some very fair proposals, and it's still going to get a significant amount of projects and equipment and things that we need accomplished. So look it over. As she said, we're available for comments, questions, and the vote won't come until April.
I echo the mayor's comments on Jamie. Thank you for all your hard work and your time, and also the department chairs for being here this evening, and also for all your hard work and work that you do on a daily basis to help this city run and be the professional city that it is. So you are to be complimented, and thank you for all the extra work that you do to get this budget ready, because I know it's not an easy task, and it takes a lot of time and effort and extra work. At the same time you're doing that, you are also doing your daily jobs, which are busy, so we appreciate that. The final issue that we have tonight is revenue sources. I will accept a motion to receive and file. Motion by Alderman Schmidt, second by Alderman Seibert. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn. Motion by Alderman Schmidt, second by Alderman Galetti. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, you can stay.
You can sell it.